Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone. So today we will be starting with the next lecture, which is the part 2 of data collection methods, and today we will be discussing about self-report measures. I am Dr. Harmeet Kaur Khan from Chitkara University, Punjab. Before moving forward, let us see the learning outcomes of today's lecture. At the end of the lecture, students will be able to describe different methods of self-report, discuss the strengths and weaknesses of questionnaires and interview, and describe the different types of the closed-ended questions for developing the questionnaires. So let us first introduce the topic self-report. Self-report is the most widely used data collection method by both qualitative and quantitative nurse researchers. So this is the method which is widely used, whether it is a quantitative study or a qualitative study. And what is meant by self-report? Self-report means whatever questions are asked in a research study, the subjects report that, subjects respond to those questions. So that is why this is known as self-report. And self-report data can be gathered either orally in an interview. So questions can be asked to the subjects through an interview or in writing in a written questionnaire. And interviews and to a lesser extent questionnaires vary in their degree of structure, their length and complexity, and their administration. So whether the questionnaire, the questions which you are asking are in structured form or unstructured form, it depends upon what type of research study you are going to undertake. Usually in a quantitative study, it is a more structured way of collecting the data, whereas in qualitative study usually it is an unstructured type of the self-report measure. And length can vary because in interview usually the length of the interview may be longer, whereas questionnaires can be filled by the subjects easily. And complexity also, the questionnaires are usually simple to answer but difficult to prepare, whereas interviews usually in the researcher should be expert enough that how to probe the questions, how to go about the interview, and usually the analysis part of the interviews is little difficult, and their administration is different because in interview the researcher himself asks the question, whereas in the questionnaire the questions are given in a written form and the subjects respond to those questions by giving the answers. A researcher collecting the structured self-report data for a quantitative study almost always use a formal written instrument. So as I have already told you that in quantitative studies mostly the self-report data which is collected is a more structured form, and usually a formal written instrument is used by the quantitative researchers. Whereas the instrument in the interview schedule where the questions are asked orally or either face-to-face or telephone interviews. And what is the instrument which is used for collecting the self-report data is known as the interview schedule when the questions are asked orally. So if you have made a structured or formal written document and you might have jotted down the questions in that, so and you are going to ask those questions orally, then this is known as an interview schedule. And the questions can be asked either face to face or through the telephonic interviews also. And it is called a questionnaire or a self-administered questionnaire when respondents complete the instruments themselves. But if the respondents give the report by themselves in a written form, then it is known as a questionnaire, or you can also call it as self-administered questionnaire, and usually it is in a pencil and paper format, but occasionally directly onto the computer. So nowadays with the advent of technology, you know that many a times we on the web also some questionnaires are available and the persons can answer, or through mail we can send the questionnaire, through Google Forms, through many other platforms you can send the questionnaire, and online only the person can fill and give it back to you. Structured instruments consist of a set of questions, and these set of questions are sometimes known as items. So these are also known as items in which the wording of both questions and in most cases responses alternative is determined. So here we determine beforehand the wording of the questions as well as the responses. So responses are already fixed by the researcher, and out of those responses only the subjects have to give the response. When structured interviews or questionnaires are used, subjects are asked to respond to the same questions in the same order and with the same set of response options. So in the structured interview or questionnaire, subjects do not get an opportunity to give an in-depth information. They have to just see that what is the question and what is the response set, and based upon the response set only they have to answer. In developing the structured instruments, much effort is usually devoted to content, form and wording of the questionnaire. So whenever the researcher has to develop the instrument, then usually because it is a structured type and formal type of the instrument, they have to devote so much of energy to develop the content of the questionnaire, the form of the questions and even the wording of the questions. Now there are two types of the questions in a self-report measure. It can be open-ended question or closed-ended questions. So let us see what are the open-ended questions. Open-ended questions allow the respondent to respond in their own words and in narrative fashion. So here the questions which are asked, it gives the opportunity to the subjects to respond in their own words. They can respond in whatever way they want, and they can narrate it fully in their own words. So the question, what was the biggest problem you faced after your surgery, is an example of an open-ended question. So this is where you are asking that during the surgery, what was the biggest problem you faced? So here it is an open-ended question, because here now the subject can give you the answer whatever he felt or he faced during the surgery. And usually such type of the questions are asked in the qualitative studies. In quantitative studies, mostly the questions are not open-ended. You have the set responses, and based upon those written responses only, the subject has to take the right response. In questionnaires, respondents are asked to give a written reply to open-ended item, and therefore adequate space must be provided to permit a full response. So if you are giving a questionnaire or a written questionnaire to a respondent to answer, then if you are giving an open-ended question, you have to see that adequate space must be provided to the respondent, so that he can write whatever comes in his mind, or in whatever way he want to provide the answer. Next is close-ended questions. Close-ended questions are also known as fixed alternative questions, and it offers respondents alternative replies from which subjects must choose the one that most closely matches the appropriate answer. So the name only says the questions are close-ended, and with the questions there are fixed alternatives, and out of these alternatives the subject has to choose only one that closely matches his answer. So here the subject does not get an opportunity to express the response in his own words. The alternatives may range from simple yes or no variety. For example, have you smoked a cigarette within the past 24 hours? So here the answer may be either in yes or no, but you can develop a question in the form of complex expression also, like opinion or behavior, where you may have more than two alternatives as responses. Good close-ended questions or items are often difficult to construct but easy to administer and especially to analyze. So if you have to prepare a close-ended question, usually you have to take care of the wording, you have to take care of the content, and even you have to think of the alternatives. So it is little difficult to construct, but once it is constructed, it is very easy to administer. The person who has to answer it is for him also it is easy, because he has to just take the alternative. And after you get the information from the subjects, it is very easy to analyze also. So because we can get the numeric information, and then we can analyze through the statistical procedures. The analysis of the open-ended items, on the other hand, is more difficult and time consuming. So open-ended questions, it is easy to ask, and respondents can also explain it in their own words. But once you get that in-depth data, then it is difficult to analyze, because the researcher, particularly in the qualitative study, the researcher should be expert in conducting the qualitative analysis, because then you have to manually read and reread, then you have to make the meaning out of that, then you have to code, and you have to make the themes. So that is little more difficult to analyze, but it is difficult, it is very easy to prepare. Close-ended items are more efficient than open-ended questions, because respondents can complete more closed than open-ended questions in a given amount of time. So definitely close-ended items are more efficient, because if you are giving a questionnaire, maybe 20 or 30 questions questionnaire to a subject, the subject can tick the alternatives to different questions within 15 to 20 minutes. Whereas if you have to ask the questions in an open-ended form, the time which will be taken by the respondent to respond to your questions, it might be he might be needing the more time. So that is why close-ended items are more efficient than the open-ended questions. And in questionnaire, subjects may be less willing to compose written responses than to check off or circle appropriate alternatives. Now you know that everybody is very busy nowadays, and if you ask them to answer in a comprehensive way, usually people are not willing, because they don't have time to give you this much time to answer each and every question fully, and they find it easy to check off or circle the appropriate alternatives in a questionnaire where the close-ended questions are there. And close-ended items are also preferred with respondents who are unable to express themselves well verbally. Yes, this also happens, because many a times you will come across many subjects who may not be able to express their thoughts, who may not become open with you, because you might be meeting them first time and they may not feel good to express everything to you. So they usually prefer the close-ended items. And particularly whenever you have to get the in-depth understanding of any phenomena, researcher has to select that which respondents can give them the good information. Whereas if you are having close-ended items or a questionnaire, structured questionnaire, then you can give the structured questionnaire to any person, and any person can circle and give it to you. Furthermore, some questions are less objectionable in closed form than in open form. That also happens, because if in an interview you are asking and sometimes you are probing, the subjects may not feel good, they may feel it objectionable to answer certain questions. Whereas in a close-ended question, because if you are taking care of anonymity and confidentiality, then even for the objectionable items also, the subjects may be ready to give you the answers. But the major drawback of closed-ended questionnaires is the possibility that researcher may have neglected or overlooked potentially important responses. So many times, because here we are giving them the fixed alternatives, and they have to just select out of those alternatives and give you the answer. So many a times, so many other responses which we might have got from the interview, we do not get those responses. And the omission of possible alternatives can lead to inadequate understanding of the issue or to outright bias if respondents choose an alternative that misrepresent their position. So if during the development of the questionnaire, if some alternatives we have not given or we have omitted some possible alternatives, then what happens? We will not be getting the adequate information about that particular phenomena, and plus respondents have to circle or tick one alternative out of the alternatives you have given. So it means they don't have any other option. So they have to take, if you have given 4 options and those 4 options the subject feels that none of the option is their response, and then in the end because they don't have any open-ended option, then what they have to do, they have to take one alternative. So then this can add the biasness, and it can decrease the validity of your results. Another objection to close-ended item is that they can be superficial. Yes, because in close-ended, many a times we may miss certain important points while developing the questionnaire, either in the form of questions or we may miss some alternatives. So that is why these are considered as superficial way of self-report. Whereas open-ended questions allow for a richer and fuller perspective on the topic of interest if respondents are verbally expressive and cooperative. So open-ended questions provide an opportunity to the respondents to provide full information. So here you will get to know, get the in-depth information or rich and full perspective of the phenomena. And particularly it is useful when your respondents are really expressive and they cooperate with you, and whatever questions you ask, they answer that question fully. So open-ended questions give freedom to the respondents and therefore offer the possibility of spontaneity and elaboration. So that also happens because here you are providing them open-ended questions and then you can probe, you can keep on asking more questions. So with that, more spontaneity and more elaboration on that particular phenomena occurs, and you get really in-depth information on that particular phenomena. Okay, now let us talk about the questionnaires first. Self-administered questionnaires which can be distributed in person. So we can distribute the self-administered questions in person or by mail or over the internet. But they have some advantages and some disadvantages. So first of all, let us talk about the strengths of the questionnaire. First one is cost. So questionnaires relative to interviews are in general much less costly and require less time and energy to administer. Because if you are collecting your data through the questionnaire, you just have to get a written document, and within small time you can collect the information from many people. For example, if you have to collect the self-report data from a, a university, from the university students, you can go to a class and you can provide the questionnaires and they can fill within 15 or 20 minutes and they can give it back to you. So it is more efficient way to collect the data because you can get the data from number of persons at a time, and so it requires less time as well as energy of the administrator. Then anonymity. So here the questionnaires offer possibility of complete anonymity because here maybe you are providing the questionnaire to number of persons and you don't know that who has filled which questionnaire, and you whereas in interview when you are talking face to face, then the anonymity cannot be maintained because researcher knows that this person has answered in a this way, or sometimes we record also. Whereas in questionnaire, if we ask them that you don't have to write the name, you have just numbered the questionnaire and then you are getting the information, then there is possibility of the complete anonymity. Then interviewer's bias. The absence of an interviewer ensures that there will be no interviewer bias. So if interviewer is not there, then definitely he is not able to judge. So his judgment will not be interfering in the responses. So whenever we are using the questionnaire in the structured form or in the written form, then there is no interviewer bias. So particularly because you just provide them the questionnaire and you are having the fixed alternatives, and the person takes his time and by his own mind he will be providing you the answers. So here there are less chances of interviewer bias. Web-based surveys are especially economical. Nowadays, mostly the information through the questionnaires is collected through the web-based survey. And these are really economical because at a time you can send the forms to many persons and you can yield a data set directly amenable to analysis. And plus, you don't have to, once you get the information through those web-based surveys, you get direct numerical information in the Excel sheet, and which you can then import into the software, statistical softwares, and you can directly analyze that. So you don't have to manually enter the data. Whereas when we are providing the face to face or in person or through mail, then each questionnaire you have to go through, and then you have to code, and then manually you have to enter the numeric values of those questionnaires in your master data sheet, whereas web-based surveys provide you the master data sheet by itself. So it is a very easy method of collecting the data through the questionnaires, and nowadays many people are using this. Now talking about the interview strengths, although interviews are considered superior to questionnaires for most research purposes, so they are having number of advantages. So let us discuss these advantages. First one is response rate. Response rate tend to be high in face-to-face interview. Always whenever the interviewer selects the respondents, then always the response rates are higher, because interviewer can probe, interviewer can again and again ask the questions on that particular area for which the interviewer needs the information. So here the response rate is very high, whereas in questionnaire so many times some people may miss many questions in the questionnaire, and in the end once you collect, then you find out that there is missing information in those questionnaires, and then you may have to remove or exclude those questionnaires out of your data. Whereas in interview this is not the possibility, because interviewer takes the interview, he asks the questions, and he tries that for each and every question he should get an answer. Next is audience. Many people simply cannot fill out a questionnaire. Now, everybody is not literate, particularly in our country. Many persons, they don't know to read and write. So it is not possible to collect the data from them in the form of written document. So for them it is better that we should go for the interview, where the researcher can ask the question and subjects can answer. So here based upon the audience we can select the interview. So interview can be better than the questionnaires here. Third one is clarity. Interviews offer some protection against ambiguous or confusing questions. Whenever we are providing the questionnaires, if any question is not clear, or the subjects are not able to answer, so they may give you the wrong information. Whereas in interview, when the researcher is asking the question in the interview form, subject can again and again ask, so that there should not be any confusion. And so that is why interviews, they often offer protection against any confusing questions, and he can clarify on many issues which might not be clear to the subjects in the questionnaires. Then depth of questioning. Interviewer can enhance the quality of self-report data through probing. So here many a times, sometimes you ask a question and in the first instance you feel that you have not got a full information, then you can probe, you can lead the questions so that you can get a good quality of information, whereas in the questionnaires it is not possible. Then is missing information. As I have already told you that in questionnaire we get a missing information, because there the respondents are likely to give the don't know responses. Whereas in interviews this is not the case, because they cannot leave any question answered in an interview. Interviewer will keep on asking the question till the time he will not be getting the answer to all the questions. Next advantage is order of questions. In an interview, researcher have control over question ordering. So, like in questionnaire, there is a set order of the questions. Respondents have to start from the first and then till the end they have to do. Whereas in an interview, depending upon the situation or how the discussion is leading, the interviewer can control, and based upon that he may keep on asking the questions, probing and leading, so that all the questions should be answered, and order can be changed depending upon the situations. Then is sample control. Interviews permit greater control over sample, because here it is in the hand of the researcher or the interviewer that how many subjects have to be taken for the interview, and whether all the subjects are providing you the information, so they can see that which particular subjects will be better able to express in an interview, so they can include those particular persons. Whereas in questionnaires you are providing the questionnaire to number of people, and out of that many of them they may not give back those questions. Same way on the web based surveys also, you may send the questionnaire to 500 or 600 persons, but out of 600 only 200 may give back the questionnaire after answering. Whereas in interview, whosoever the person is interviewing, he will be included in the sample, because interviewer will be having the complete control and he will be asking the questions and he will be trying to get the in-depth information about that particular phenomena. Next is supplementary data. So here when the researcher is interviewing, particularly face-to-face interviews, it can result in additional data through observation. Researcher can observe the situation at that time. So sometimes, like if you are asking the question and subject is having some emotions on his face, subject's gestures are changing, that also you can observe and document. So that provides you additional information. And another example I would like to give, that for example if you go to the house of a person to collect some information through face-to-face interview, you can observe the surroundings also. You can observe his behavior, if any other person is available, or if he is alone. So you get an additional opportunity to observe some other areas also, rather than only the questions which you have developed. Now let us discuss about specific types of the closed-ended questions which mostly we use in the quantitative research. So first one are dichotomous questions. Dichotomous name only says that two options. So dichotomous questions require respondents to make a choice between two response alternatives. So such as yes, no, or male and female. So you give only two responses and they have two alternatives, and out of these two alternatives they have to give one answer. So this is an example of dichotomous question. For example, this is, have you ever been hospitalized? The person has to answer in yes or no. So this is a typical example of dichotomous question. Now coming to the another type of the close-ended question, that is multiple choice question. Multiple choice questions often offer more than two response alternatives. So here they are having multiple alternatives. They are having more than two response alternatives. So the question can be, how important is it to you to avoid a pregnancy at this time? So there are four options and the person can choose the one option which is very close to his response. So this is an example of a multiple choice question. Another type of the question is cafeteria question. Cafeteria questions are specific type of multiple choice questions. So these are also type of the multiple choice questions that ask the respondent to select a response that most closely corresponds to their view, and the response options are usually full expression of a position on the topic. So how is it differing from the multiple choice question is that here the alternatives are full response options. These are statements, and after reading those full response options where the full expression of a position of a topic is given, the person can give the response which is most close to their own view. So I'll give you one example. Like for example, this is the question: people have different opinion about the use of estrogen replacement therapy for women at menopause. So here the researcher want the opinion about estrogen replacement therapy. Which of the following statement best describe or represent your point of view? Now here you can see the answers or alternatives are not only one or two words. It is a full statement, and number of statements can be there. A person can read, and whichever statement he feels that this is his point of view, then he can take. So here the response is like estrogen replacement is dangerous and should be banned. Estrogen replacement has undesirable side effects that suggest the need for caution in its use. I am undecided about my views on estrogen replacement. Estrogen replacement has many beneficial effects that merits its use, and estrogen replacement is a wonder treatment that should be administered routinely to most menopausal women. So this type of question where multiple options are there, but options are in the form of statement or full expression of a position, then this is known as a cafeteria approach questions. Another type of the question is rank order questions. So rank order questions ask respondents to rank target concepts along a continuum, such as most to least important. So rank order name only says that here the respondents have to rank whatever alternatives or responses are given. Out of that they have to rank that which one they will be ranking the highest, and which one, and ranking can be from the highest to lowest. And respondents are asked to assign a 1 to the concept that is most important and 2 to the concept that is second in importance, and so on. So rank order questions should involve 10 or fewer rankings. This is an example of the rank order question. So here the question is that people value different things in life. Below is a list of things that many people value, and please indicate their order of importance to you by placing a 1 beside the most important, 2 beside the second most important, and so on. So here the question can be career, achievement, work, family, relationship, friends, social interaction, or health, or money, or religion. So number of options are given, and the subject has to give the ranking based upon the importance he gives. Another type of the question is forced choice question. So name only says that here the respondent is forced to choose any one response out of the response alternatives given. So forced choice question require respondent to choose between two statements that represent polar positions. So polar position means extreme positions are given or extreme characteristics are given, and out of these extreme two positions the person has to choose one. The person has to forcibly choose one. So that is why this is known as forced choice questions. Several personality tests use a forced choice question. So particularly personality tests, they have forced choice formats. For example, which statement most closely represent your point of view? The first option is what happens to me is my own doing. Second option is sometimes I feel I don't have enough control over my life. So these both the statements or the alternatives are totally opposite to each other, but the respondent has to forcibly select any one out of these two options. Another type of the question is rating questions. Rating questions ask respondents to evaluate something along an ordered dimension. So there is an order dimension, and on that dimension the person is asked to rate that at what point you will be rating. For example, if you want to ask about the pain, you can ask the person that 0 to 10 what is the pain, and if the person is saying 0 it means no pain and 10 means extreme pain, and then based upon that the person can rate. So rating questions are typically bipolar, as I have told you, 0 to 10, so 0 might be no pain and 10 means extreme pain. So this is a typically bipolar type with the end point specifying opposite extremes on a continuum. The endpoints and sometimes intermediary points along the scale are verbally labeled. So here the endpoints are verbally labeled, that what it means if you are saying 0 or 10, what does it mean by 0? 0 you will be writing verbally as no pain and 10 as extreme pain. And even intermediary points also you can give the labels verbally. The number of gradation or points along the scale can vary but should always be an odd number, such as 7, 9, 11 to allow a neutral midpoint. So the midpoint should be neutral one. On a scale from 0 to 10, where 0 means extremely dissatisfied and 10 means extremely satisfied, how satisfied were you with the nursing care you received during hospitalization? So this type of a question is asked in a rating question. So 0 means it is saying that 0 means extremely dissatisfied, whereas 10 means extremely satisfied. So here this is on a continuum of 11 points, and it provides us the information that what is 0 means and what is 10 means, and based upon that the subject can answer that what type of, at what point, whether he is satisfied or dissatisfied. Another type of the close-ended question is checklists. Checklist encompasses several questions that have the same response format. So here checklist is having number of items or questions, but response format is same. For example, you may have certain items on one point on one side, and responses can be in the form of yes or no, or any type of the response format, but it will be same for all the items. So a checklist is a two-dimensional arrangement in which a series of questions is listed along one dimension, usually vertically, and response alternatives are listed along the other. The two-dimensional character of the checklist has led some people to call these metric questions, because here we are using the two dimensions, so that is why sometimes these are also called the matrix questions, because on a vertical dimension you are having the items or questions, and on the other side you are having the responses. So checklists are relatively efficient and easy for respondents to understand. Next is visual analog scale. So visual analog scales are used to measure the subjective experiences such as pain, fatigue, nausea and dyspnea. So here some phenomena or some feelings or experiences are there which are subjective experiences which others cannot express. So there sometimes for example, if we ask about the pain, person himself can give the rating, but in certain situations if the person is not able to express, then the other person, after seeing, he should be able to see that at what level the person is having pain, at what level the fatigue is there, or nausea is there, or dyspnea is there. So in the visual analog scale, usually a straight line is given. VAS is a straight line, the end anchors of which are labeled as extreme limits of the sensation or feeling being measured. So one end will be showing the lowest type of the measurement, and the another end will be showing the highest type of the sensation of or the measurement. And subjects are asked to mark a point on the line corresponding to the amount of sensation experienced. Traditionally, the VAS line is 100 millimeters in length, which facilitates the derivation of the score from 0 to 100 through simple measurements of distance from one end of the scale to subject's mark on the line. So this is an example of the visual analog scale. Here you can see 0 means no pain. So this faces scale is also it is also called as a faces scale, where if person is smiling, he is having no pain, but the worst pain is showing that the person is crying, he is having severe pain. Another type of the close-ended question which are used in the scales, or you can say the scales, are a very important type of a scale which is used in the nursing research and psychology, are Likert scales. The most widely used scaling technique is Likert scale, named after the psychologist Francis Likert. A Likert scale consists of several declarative items that express a viewpoint on a topic. So, for example, if you want to understand the attitude for nursing profession, then you may have so many items available on one dimension, and on the another dimension you will have number of options. So these one side the items will be declarative items, and then on the other side you will have the options for that. It is usually 5 or 7 point, 3, 5 or 7 point options. So respondents are asked to indicate the degree to which they agree or disagree with the opinion expressed by the statement. And good Likert scales usually include 10 or more statements. So total items should be more than 10, and response options may vary from 5 point to 7 point responses. For example, it can vary from strongly disagree, disagree, not sure, agree to the strongly agree. This is an example of a Likert scale. Like here, if question is asked, how do you personally evaluate the importance of following aspects of the coordinated care? So the person may read the items on one side, and based upon, like, this is the first item, then he may give the answer on these response options. So like here, the option is very important, important, so less important, and not important. So this is a typical example of a Likert scale, and Likert scales are widely used in nursing research. Another important type of the scale is semantic differential scale. With the semantic differential scales, respondents are asked to rate a concept. For example, we may ask about primary nursing or team nursing on a series of bipolar objectives. So we are having bipolar adjectives. For example, you can ask, is it effective, ineffective, good or bad, important, unimportant, strong and weak. So you are having bipolar adjectives, and on those scales the person or the subjects have to answer. Where for example, this is an example, one side this is inaccessible and totally accessible, and the person can tick whether the person is totally accessible. Maybe you can ask the information about their leaders or their boss, and then the person may say that he is totally accessible or inaccessible, or he is alright accessible, then he may tick 5 or 6, or he is rude or courteous. So based upon his behavior they can give the scoring. Same way, caring to unsympathetic, it can also be given. So you can give the two bipolar adjectives, and based upon that the persons have to answer. Whenever we are collecting the self-report data, as a researcher we should be having the understanding about the response bias, and how to decrease that response bias we should take the measures. So let us discuss about different types of the response bias which can happen when we are collecting the data through the self-report methods. So the first one is the social desirability response bias. So what is social desirability response bias? It refers to the tendency of some individuals to misrepresent their responses consistently by giving answers that are congruent with the prevailing social values. So it means some individuals may try to give the answers in a way that whatever responses they are giving should be socially acceptable. Particularly, it happens when we are asking about certain beliefs or attitudes of the persons. So they try to give the answers what are socially acceptable behaviors, whereas his own feeling or his own behavior may not correspond with the responses which he gives. So this is known as a social desirability response bias. But we can decrease this response bias by subtle, indirect, and delicately worded questioning. So, if we take care while developing the questions and our items or questions are made in a way that those are clear and indirect type of the questions, and the wording is also not very harsh wording, then they may not try to give you the wrong responses. The creation of a permissive atmosphere and provision of respondents' anonymity also encourages the frankness. So, this is also very important that anonymity should always be maintained, so that the person should know that his name will not come, and the person will not be researcher will not be knowing that who has filled this particular form. Then they may be frank in providing the information. And plus, whenever the researcher is collecting the information, he should not be judgmental. He should provide the environment of frankness, so that they should be able to provide the uh, right information. Another type of the response bias is extreme responses. These are an example of response sets that introduces biases when some individuals consistently select extreme alternatives. So sometimes you will see that in a questionnaire, if you have given to a person to each and every item, they might have circled the strongly agree option only, or they might have circled the strongly disagree option only. So this is known as the extreme response bias. Another one is acquiescence response set. Some people have been found to agree with the statements regardless of the content. Such people are known as yes-sayers. So some people, whatever you ask, they will be agreeing to that. So they may give you the information only on agree, agree, agree. Whereas less common problem is the opposite tendency for other individuals called naysayers to disagree with the statements independently of the question content. So here some people, they may have the habit of giving the answer in disagree form only. So this is also one problem where you may get the persons who are yesayers or naysayers. Okay, so till now we have discussed about the self-report methods which we use for the quantitative studies. So we should talk about the qualitative self-report techniques also, which also should be known to the researchers. So the first technique is the unstructured interview or semi-structured interview. So here usually whenever we are collecting the qualitative information, we want to get the in-depth information. So in an unstructured questionnaire, no written document or no questions are written by the researcher beforehand, and the researcher direct away go into the field and ask the questions whatever comes in his mind regarding that particular phenomena. That is a typical type of a unstructured interview. Whereas in semi-structured interview, the researcher may just jot down some areas on which he has to ask the question. Means direct questions may not be written, but the areas where he has to emphasize while interviewing. So those are known as the semi-structured interview. In semi-structured interview, some small interview guides might be already available with the researcher. Third one is focus group interviews. Focus group interviews are also used nowadays a lot in the qualitative self-report techniques, where rather than interviewing one person, a group of people are interviewed, and those people may not be knowing each other. They might be different. For example, you might be wanting to know the opinion of the caregivers of the cancer patients. So you may bring together the caregivers of the cancer patients together, maybe 8 or 10 persons, and the researcher may start asking the questions. So focus group interviews provide you really rich information, because you will get the number of viewpoints of different people. And another thing is, Once the one person starts giving the answer, other person also gets a lead, so other person may also start explaining. And sometimes the people who cannot explain in a better way, they get an idea from the other people and they also start talking in an interview. So focus group interviews are really good way of getting the rich information about any phenomena in the qualitative research approaches. Next one is joint interview. Now, what is the difference between joint interview and focus group interview is that in focus group interview, I have told you that the group which you are taking, they are not related to each other. Whereas in joint interview, we take the interview of more than one person, where 2 or 3 members, maybe family members together can be interviewed, or caregiver and the patient together can be interviewed. So that is known as the joint interviews. And in joint interviews, you may get the information from both the point of view, patient as well as the caregiver's point of view. But here joint interview should be the second part. First you should conduct the face to face interview with the one person, and then you can go for the joint interview. Why I am saying that first you should do the face to face interview? Because sometimes in a family, for example, caregiver may not talk about his concerns in front of the patient. So that is why you should do the face to face interview first with the caregiver, and then you can do a joint interview along with the patient. Another is life histories. This is also an important type of self-report measure which is used in the qualitative research approaches. In the life histories, the subjects life histories can be collected. So particularly here, the subjects can provide you with the data which they may have jotted down, or about some incidences which has occurred. So particularly here you can get the life history from the people who might have undergone some particular incidents, and you can ask from them and they can provide you the in-depth information about the particular phenomena. Another is oral histories. Oral histories is you can collect the information from the persons who have undergone a particular phenomena. For example, the persons who have come across some disaster, then after that you can go and talk to those people, and they can provide you about that particular information, that during during the disaster time, what happened, and then what did they do, how did they help the other person. So like that, the oral history sometimes can be really useful to get an information about a incidents which has already happened. Another is critical incidents. So you can collect the information about the critical incidents also. So particularly critical incidents, for example, you may collect the data from the nurse entrepreneurs, that what was the point when they thought of becoming the nurse entrepreneur, what was that critical incidents which made them to change their profession from the bedside to the entrepreneur. So you can talk to different persons and you can include 10 or 12 critical incidences, and based upon that then you can explain that particular phenomena in a good way. Then is diaries and journals. This is diaries and journals is that the subjects, they provide you the information, they can write. For example, if any patient after surgery is going to the home after discharge, and then you can provide them the diary where they might be writing that every day what was their feeling, whether they were feeling good, and what type of activities they conducted, and whether they were able to move, they were able to ambulate, or they were having some pain, and what type of emotions came in their mind. So they can write in the diaries, and these diaries can be used as the information or data for the qualitative research studies. Then is the think aloud method. Here the persons are asked to think about a particular phenomena, and then they can either jot it down, or they can audio record that particular, and then you can use that particular data or information for the qualitative research studies. Next is photo elicitation interviews. Photo elicitation interviews means the subjects are shown the photos and then they are asked to express that. So particularly here the photos are used by the researcher. Maybe the album of a person can be used where their ceremonies have taken place, and that photo can be shown to the person. Then he can be asked that do you remember anything, what happened at that time, and what does this photo shows, or what is the emotion that comes in your mind, and the person can express based upon the photo. So this is known as the photo elicitation interview. So it is better to decide beforehand that which photos you will be using for the interviewing. Otherwise researcher has to think once he goes to the home and at the time only he gets the photo, then the researcher has to think and then he has to collect the interview or ask the questions. Then self-report narratives on the internet. So nowadays on internet also so many times there are some web pages available where the person can write about their own incidences or their own narratives about any phenomena. For example, if any social phenomena is there, and there can be web page available, and person can go and write about that particular social phenomena, that what does he feel about that, or what didn't he like, or what type of incidences has occurred in his life related to that particular phenomena. So this is also a method of collecting the qualitative report, but here then you don't know that which person might have given, because sometimes persons want to be anonymous and you may not be knowing that whether the person is from general population or somebody who is really related to the sample which you are considering for your research study. So that type of problems can be there, but still this is a very good method of getting the in-depth information about any phenomena in a qualitative research. So with this the self-report method is over. So let us summarize the today's lecture. So self-report data usually are collected by an oral interview or written questionnaire, and self-reports vary widely in their degree or structure or standardization. So they can vary, they can be structured questionnaires, there can be semi-structured or unstructured type of the questionnaires. Then structured self-report instruments may include open or close-ended questions. We have already talked about open and closed-ended questions. Like open-ended questions permit respondents to reply in narrative fashion, whereas close-ended questions offer response options from which respondents must choose. Types of the close-ended questions include dichotomous questions, which require a choice between two options, for example yes and no, and multiple choice questions which offer a range of alternatives. Then cafeteria question, in which respondents are asked to select a statement best representing their view. So this is a type of a multiple choice question also, only because, but here the responses are in the form of statement. Then rank order questions, in which respondents are asked to rank a list of alternatives along a continuum. Then forced choice questions, which require respondents to choose between two competing positions. And rating questions, which ask respondents to make judgments along an ordered bipolar dimension. So bipolar dimensions are there and person has to respond on that bipolar dimension. Then checklists or metric questions, in which several questions requiring the same response format are listed. And visual analog scale, which are continua used to measure the subjective experiences such as pain. Then is Likert scale. It comprises a series of statements worded favorably or unfavorably toward a phenomena. And respondents indicate degree of agreement or disagreement with each statement. A total score is computed by summing item scores, and each of which is scored for the intensity or direction of the favorably expressed. So Likert scales are particularly number of items are there, and then all the items, how the person has responded, can be summed, and then we can get a score for a particular phenomena. Then semantic differentials consist of the series of bipolar rating scales on which respondents indicate their reaction towards some phenomena. Here also bipolar responses are there, adjectives are there, and person has to see the responses based upon the bipolar adjectives. Then response bias. Response biases can be different types. We have talked about social desirability response bias, extreme response bias, yes-sayers and naysayers. So with this, our lecture on the part 2 of data collection method is over, and today we have discussed about the self-report measures. Now we will be meeting in the lecture 10, where we will be talking about the data collection methods, particularly biophysiological measurements and observation and other types of the data collection methods. Thank you. Have a nice day.